Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope you had a great weekend. Thanks for joining us. Well, the 4 p.m. deadline over the weekend came and went, and Kirk Cousins was still on the Atlanta Falcons roster. That means he gets a guaranteed $10 million roster bonus due in 2026. It also means, obviously, he's not a free agent and available for the Browns to sign at NFL veteran minimum. Tony Grossi, longtime Browns beat reporter, ESPN Cleveland, talking about Kirk Cousins and the Browns.
What happened with the Kirk Cousins thing? Because, Tony, everybody thought that was the Browns' big move, and here we are. He's still in Atlanta.
Yeah, and I think the Falcons will keep him until somebody needs him. And somebody other than the Browns could end up being desperate. You know, this could go all the way to the trade deadline with Atlanta and Kirk Cousins. They could go into the season with him. So I'm at the point where, I don't think the Browns are going to trade for Cousins prior to the draft or trade for him at all.
At all.
Again, you're trading for that contract unless Atlanta agrees to pay for it all, which they might do just for a fourth round pick.
But then you'd have to give up a legitimate asset.
All those things have to be weighed, and it will depend on who the Browns have available to sign as a free agent. The Patriots, their backup quarterback, Joe Milton, reportedly, Patriots want a third-round pick for him. Sources closer to the situation say that the Browns are not interested. So the Browns not interested in trading for Joe Milton, as the Patriots want a third-round pick for him. Still plenty of conversation about the Browns and what they're going to do relative to the number 2 pick overall. Albert Breer from Monday Morning Quarterback, he was on the Rich Eisen show talking about what he's hearing from scouts relative to Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. With Ward, scouts are directing people to a specific game that shows everything that Cam Ward can do and some of the things you have to be concerned about.
I'd implore anybody who wants to see it. A couple scouts told me this. Go to watch the Cal game, the Miami Cal game. They told me you see everything there, all the good, all the bad, like it's all there, right? So you're chasing ceiling with him, which if you're Cleveland or Tennessee in the AFC and you're contending with Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and C.J. Stroud and all these different guys, then maybe you do have to chase ceiling. But at the very least, that ceiling's there. I think with Shedeur, it feels to me a little bit more like Bo Nix. I haven't been able to find very many people, Rich, that think he's a first rounder. That doesn't mean nobody does. But I think, I would have said the exact same thing a day before the draft about Bo Nix. Like, where is he going to go? Well, Sean Payton, he may be a fit there, but nowhere else. And then Sean Payton takes him, So for Bo Nix, it wasn't about, proving to the league that I'm this superhuman prospect. It was finding the right fit. And ultimately he found the right fit and had a fantastic rookie year. I think that's the boat that Shedeur's in right now, where there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to look at him as a second or a third round pick based on his physical skill set. And for him, it's going to be about finding the place that looks at him differently and sees him differently and says, this guy is a fit for us in particular. It doesn't matter what he is for anybody else. He's a fit for us. Because you and I both know if he finds the right fit, if Shedeur Sanders finds the right fit and goes on and wins a bunch of games as a rookie, nobody's going to care.
More importantly, a place that can maximize the skill set he has at quarterback. So, again, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. Former Browns backup quarterback Jameis Winston, he's making the rounds. He's getting ready to visit the Giants tomorrow, per sources. New York Brain Trust is waiting on Aaron Rodgers' decision. It continues to meet with alternatives. Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, now Jameis Winston. Names sound familiar? All the names that the Browns are considering as well. Cincinnati Bengals, those moths you're seeing flying around the state of Ohio, they're flying out of the Brown family checkbook because they just wrote a couple of big ones. Jamar Chase, 4-year, $160 million extension. T. Higgins, 4-year, $115 million. Contracts make them the NFL's highest paid duo of wide receivers. The Bengals spending a lot of money on their wide receiving core. Texans All-Pro quarterback Derek Stingley Jr., 3-year, $90 million extension, $89 million guaranteed. The $30 million base value per year makes him the highest paid defensive back in NFL history. So the cornerback market has been completely reset as well with Stingley Jr.'s new deal. Last night, Cavs and Magic. Cavs trying to win their 17th straight game, already a franchise record at 16, going for 17. No Evan Mobley. DeAndre Hunter beats the buzzer at the half. Cavs led 60-47 at the half, close in the fourth quarter. Donovan Mitchell driving, gets the dunk. He led the team with 23 points. Here come the Magic, though. From the outside, Anthony Black. Wide open in that corner. Rotation wasn't great. Black knocks down the three-pointer. Another three-pointer, other corner for Black. Magic took a 92-91 lead. Cavs back and forth in this fourth quarter. As attacking is Darius Garland, and he gets it to Jarrett Allen for the dunk. Cavs led 197. Contavious Caldwell-Pope for the Magic again, wide open three. Knocks it down, tied the game up at 100. Cavs come back, though, down 2 until Max Strus, wide, long three, knocks it down. Cavs went up 103-102. Magic up by a point, and Paolo Banchero knocks down the field goal, and the Magic get it done late as the Magic win it 108-103. It snaps the Cavs' 17-game winning streak. Kenny Atkinson, head coach, on the loss.
First of all, you got to credit them, right? Are they top three defense? You know, that's what they do. They're an excellent defensive team. I thought that that stretch at the end of the third quarter, you know, I hate to nitpick on one thing, but where they turned us over. You know, I think they got tied twice. They got Donovan one. That seemed like it flipped it, but we did not have our normal ball movement tonight. Got ISO heavy, and they kept us out of transition. So I think they again, huge credit to them. That's their identity. But this league is humbling, and if you think you're like, even 16 in a row, whatever, right around the corner is this is obviously a playoff team and a tough team to play.
Cavs will head out west. They'll start a West Coast trip against the Clippers in Los Angeles late tomorrow night on the West Coast. Hard to believe, only about 10 days. Week from Thursday, Guardians will start the regular season, and they'll begin it in the division against AL Central rival Kansas City Royals in Kansas City. Chris Antonetti, president of baseball operations for the Guardians, about the American League Central and how it lays out this year.
Yeah, I think the strength of the division last year surprised a lot of people. I think if you look back at some of the things we shared at the beginning of the season last year, is we anticipated it being a really competitive division with each team having a compelling case for why they were better. And I think that's again the case this year. There are 4 teams in the division, and I think we expect to be contending for the division title. And we're hopeful that we can be in that mix. But we know we've got our work cut out for us because there's talented young teams that are on the upswing.
Tigers, Royals, and the Twins getting healthy, so it will be tough in the American League Central without question. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Browns. Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Scott Petrak, straight ahead, Sports4CLE. He'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We turn our attention to the Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, what's up, David Saylor? Kenny Pickett, Dave. Initially, I thought to myself, I would rather have DTR because even though DTR looked bad in Ken Dorsey's system, DTR did show growth and promise when they were still running Kevin Stefanski's system. And then I think about it. Every quarterback outside of Watson has had their best season with Kevin Stefanski, and maybe they see something that we don't see in Kenny Pickett, and maybe Kevin Stefanski believes that he can bring out the best in Kenny Pickett. But I hope and pray that we're not going into next season with Kenny Pickett penciled in as the starter. What do you think?
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as brownzone.com. Scott, yeah, I get where they're going with Kenny Pickett penciled in as the starter. I know you wrote an article, and in talking to him, he views himself as a starter and isn't really worried about it. Remember, first-round talent, I think you got a pretty good idea that you saw DTR. I don't know that he's an NFL starter. So I get the trade, absolutely, from the Browns' perspective.
Yeah, I think, first of all, either not ready or not capable of starting in this league. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think Kenny Pickett's an upgrade. So on the surface, I like the trade. I don't think Pickett's necessarily penciled in as a starter on any kind of Browns depth chart. They're going to add a veteran. They're going to draft somebody, could be as high as number 2. You know, Pickett could come in and be the second or the third. I know he said he was promised he gets to compete for the starting job, and that's fine. But there is a hierarchy. You know, the number 2 pick in the draft, if you sign a guy like Russell Wilson, they just naturally, I think, go ahead of Kenny Pickett. But he is a first-round pick. Now, it was the worst quarterback draft in recent memory, so I think you have to remember that. But he's got a winning record as a starter. That means something. Played with 2 good organizations, the Steelers and the Eagles. So I think there's some value there. I just don't think he's the long-term answer, and I don't think the Browns do either.
No, again, if he's the way I viewed him when they signed him, he's the guy that if you're a rookie, whoever you draft him, if you draft him 2, if you draft him, he's okay, this guy isn't quite ready to face the live bullets, so you send Pickett out there until the rookie is ready to go, assuming you sign a veteran and he gets banged up or something.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you don't sign Russell Wilson, right? Or, you know, if you sign a guy like Joe Flacco, then it's probably Pickett and Flacco competing to be the guy that would be the necessary bridge, or the bridge if you need one, until the rookie's ready. So I think there's still a lot of puzzle pieces being shifted around here. Who knows how it's going to play out? But I do think Kenny Pickett has shown he can play in this league. I just don't know if he's shown he can be a big-time player in this league.
Yeah, and again, you know, when I'm sure you hear it probably even more than I do, all the guys that are available at this time of year as a quarterback, they're kind of discarded. Either they're too old or they haven't played well. And nobody that is available when you're this far into free agency from the quarterback position is like, man, let's go out and get that guy, because they'd already be on a team. A team wouldn't have given up on him if they were that kind of wow factor.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, you know, you could talk me into, and actually you don't have to talk me into, I like the idea of Russell Wilson. I think he could come in and you have a chance to win 10 or 11 games. And I think the same about Kirk Cousins and maybe even Aaron Rodgers, even though I don't think he's an option for the Browns. But those are like the 3 guys. And then there's Jameis Winston, who we already saw here, but I think he's probably number 4 on that list. And then there's Joe Flacco. And then there's Carson Wentz, right? So it's not a group loaded with must-have guys. You know, maybe Sam Darnold was one of those, maybe Geno Smith, but, you know, even those guys, their teams let them go. So it's tough to find your quarterback in free agency. It just is.
Yeah, and you might get lucky, and one of the guys that's out there may end up having a year like Sam Darnold did. it's about fitting that. We'll talk a little bit more about Russell Wilson coming up next segment. Let's turn our attention to Myles Garrett. It's kind of interesting. When I saw he was going to be available, I was like, this is going to be interesting just because of the scorched earth tour that was Super Bowl Radio's Row. What was your big takeaway? And I know you wrote an article about it. What was your takeaway from his media availability?
Yeah, it was interesting. It's tough. I thought the atmosphere was subdued, and I think that makes sense given, it's not a new guy coming into town. It's a guy signing an extension, but we know all the history with the extension, and it's all about the trade request and everything he said to try to get that trade request to come to fruition. So, that was a backdrop, and I think it made it hard for this to be, just genuinely all celebration, and you knew the questions weren't going to be like that. I thought, Myles, I do believe Myles when he says, from day one, I wanted to bring a championship to Cleveland. Like, he meant that, because he said that to me throughout his career, over 8 years. He's said it countless times to me and to others and to the group of media. So I believe him when he says that. Now, I don't know if I necessarily believe him when he says, yeah, we can win a Super Bowl, in 2025, which he didn't even go that far to say. He said he trusts Andrew Berry. He believes the plan can get him to win over a short period of time. So maybe that means 2026 and they can take strides in 2025. I think, to me, it was more about he came to the realization that the Browns weren't going to trade him. So what were his options? His options were, okay, wait until September and sit out and try to make it ugly enough where they have to trade me. And I just think he couldn't stomach that, and that's not who he is. And I don't think that's great for a legacy when you're talking about legacy. And then the other option is to let the frustration settle from the season, find optimism to believe what Andrew Berry's trying to do and get on board with the plan, and then sign a giant extension. So I think that's the path he chose. But the other thing I want to object to is, there's so much talk about the money. I think he was going to get that money regardless. I think if on February 2nd, the day before the trade request, if he went to Andrew Berry or his agent and said, here's what will make us happy, I think he would have gotten that deal. And I think if he'd been traded, he would have gotten that same deal with another team. So I know the money is a factor, and I'm not just dismissing that, but I certainly don't think that was the only reason that he rescinded that trade request and signed the extension.
No, I would agree. He wasn't going to get traded. I mean, there was never any budge. It was a matter, he tried to go to the owner. The owner said, go talk to Andrew Berry. He wasn't. There was no way they could trade him and still improve the roster even remotely like they want to. So he wasn't going to get traded. And remember, he's got 2 years left. It just keeps... It was going to be a recurring problem for him to try to get out of there. And I think the no trade thing, if it isn't going the way the Browns want it to and the way he wants it to, he can kind of now have at least a say of where he goes if it all goes south for him here.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference. When he requested the trade, if he had say over where he was going to go, because he would have threatened not to sign an extension, right? So he had a little bit of a hammer, or a big hammer there. In my extension, he doesn't have that the trade or the no trade clause, because then it gives him that leverage that I think he had before he signed the extension as well.
Yeah. I know you also wrote an article about, Joe Tryon-Shiroka, kind of the free agent, and how excited he is to be paired with Myles Garrett. Take us through that, and it'll be interesting to see what happens relative to Okoronkwo and those guys as well.
I had was, it feels like an overlap to Obo to me. And does that mean he's going to be a salary cap casualty? And maybe he still will, but they haven't done it by now. Maybe they'll try to trade him during the draft and see if they can get, a mid-round draft pick or, late-round pick, whatever it would be. Or maybe they just say, hey, we want to load up on defensive linemen because that's where our strength is, and we're going to try to, rush the heck out of the quarterback. So I could see it going a couple different ways. I like them bringing in a younger guy to pair with Myles Garrett. Now, and I also don't think it precludes them from taking Abdul Carter at number 2 or, a defensive end at number 33 because it's a one-year deal. So I think it still gives them flexibility, but it gives them another piece for Jim Schwartz. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka certainly thinks he's going to be better in the 4-3 scheme of Schwartz than the 3-4 scheme of Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay. He'll have his hand down. He'll be on the line of scrimmage all the time, not be dropping. And a lot of guys love that. And they love that switch. And Zadarius Smith was one of them. He couldn't wait to get back into the 4-3. So I think there's a chance that they can unlock something with him. Former number 32 overall pick. I think he's got some upside. He's a big dude. I think he's got a lot of athleticism. So it feels like a move with some upside for the Browns when they weren't going to be super active in free agency. I think this is a type of move they were looking to make.
Yeah, and we know they liked him coming out of Washington because you kept hearing about him when he was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. Scott Patrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll turn our attention a little bit more to the quarterback position, talk a little bit more about Russell Wilson. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back with Scott Petrek. Stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you, sir, what's your name? Where are you from?
Tom Burrell from Lexington, Ohio.
I'm playing Powerball. I use auto pick when I pick my numbers. Do I have better, worse, or the same odds?
Same odds.
I'd say better.
I still think worse. Same odds.
He's got it. It's the same. Auto pick, numbers you pick, same odds. Either way. He has it. He has it, folks. He already knows. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrek from the Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, this is Scratchy from Tallahassee again. I was just thinking about the quarterback situation, and nobody seems to talk the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, who's with the Panthers now on a 2-year, $8 million contract. He's 37 years old, but it seems to me like we ought to be able to get him for like a 4th or 5th round draft choice. But he's been a decent quarterback throughout his career, so let me know what you think. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, there are no bad answers. I don't think they're trading him, though. That's their insurance for if Bryce Young kind of doesn't continue to grow like they think he will.
Yeah, and he stabilized things last year in Carolina when they benched Young for a while. He stepped in. He won that game right away. I think his first start after they'd been so bad. If he were available, I think he slots right in there behind Wilson, Cousins, and Rodgers. I like him better than Winston. I like him better than Flacco. I'm just not sure he's available. But he's a guy that he's one of those few guys that you can put in and for 6 games, and you can say he could win 3 or 4 of those. I think he could still do that at this level and at this age.
I would agree wholeheartedly, and I like the thought, but I'm with my initial reaction is, man, the Panthers probably aren't going to trade him. So Russell Wilson was in town last week, meet with the Browns. Mike Florio, Chris Sims, Pro Football Talk, on the type of player Russell Wilson is at this juncture of his career.
He's not the Russell Wilson of 5 years ago. He can't run away from pressure. He's got one club in the bag, and that's it right there.
That's it.
And it's beautiful when
is.
it works, but that's it. That's your Russell Wilson highlight package. Moonball left, moonball right.
That's exactly
moonball
right, Mike.
left, moonball right. That's it.
I agree. It's a limited variety in how he can attack. And then, all right, so the play, as we know, yes, it's always been a little bit outside the numbers. We don't work the middle of the field. That was his MO even in Seattle. And we talked about that back in those days. There'd be areas where you'd go, damn, he only throws it outside. But he got away with it for so long for exactly what you said. It didn't matter. Wait, somebody opened deep? Oh, no. All right, I'll sit back here. I'm athletic. And now I'll either run or make a move or scramble and buy a little time and then throw a ball. And that was how Russell Wilson played. And because of his physical ability, he could get away with that for a long, long time. But now he's at a point in an age where you're exactly right. It's changed. He can't play that way anymore. So what do you have to do when you can't play that way anymore? You got to play a little bit more with your mind, your feel, your experience. You got to play within the pocket. You're not going to be able to run outside, make magic plays, do all of that. And Russell Wilson is still just lacking in that department.
Maybe. The not playing in the middle of the field, I think that's, when I think about it, I think he fits Kevin Stefanski's offense. You don't see Kevin Stefanski throwing the ball in the middle of the field. You see some rollouts. You see timing. I think he can play that way. And the one thing is, he didn't turn the ball over a ton. And I would argue Pittsburgh's offense, as far as playmakers go, it's similar to the Browns.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think he's the same player that he was, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. I don't know if anybody would argue that he is. I flash back to when the Browns lost to Denver in 2023. And it was the last game DTR started before he got hurt, and then they went to Flacco. Russell Wilson made some plays scrambling in that game, and that was only, 15 months ago. So I think he can still move. It's not like he's only in the pocket. Now, I don't think he can run around and drop back 20 yards like he used to and then fire the deep ball. But can he run the play-action Stefanski scheme and get outside the tackle box and make a throw and hit somebody on a deep dig? I think he certainly can do that. The Browns would not have any interest in him if he couldn't. And I think the middle of the field stuff is because he's not the biggest guy in the world, right? And it's harder to see over those big bodies. And, maybe he's not throwing the seam route to David Njoku all day long. But they had those issues with Baker Mayfield, too. And you got to figure out a way to work around him. And I think Stefanski's system would enable Russell Wilson to do that, would get outside the pocket some and live out there. He's still got the big arm. I think he is really smart. It's interesting that, Chris Sims would say that he's never kind of made that transition to be just a, kind of one of those older guys that just figures out a way. But maybe it's not too late for that. Maybe he can still do that. So I definitely think he's worth exploring. I have no question about that at all. And I think he can still win games for you in this league. And, he won games last year with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and he didn't turn the ball. The main thing I think you got to find is a guy that takes care of the football and doesn't put what I think will be a pretty good defense on the short field. That last 2 years, they've been putting the defense on short fields. Now, I generally like the idea of Russell Wilson. This one caused me a little bit concern, though. So Jerry Jeudy, last 14 games with Russell Wilson a couple years ago with the Broncos, 48 receptions, 625 yards, and a touchdown. Last 14 games with the worst quarterback room in the NFL. Last year with the Browns, 78 receptions, 1,104 yards, 3 touchdowns. I know it's a different offense, but Judy's kind of the big-time playmaker of this group so far, Scott. So that, I'm not saying it precludes you from signing Russell Wilson, but I think you got to look at it and see, why didn't Jeudy and Wilson click? Was it Sean Payton's offense? Yeah, you at least have to be aware of it.
It's a phone call to Jerry Jeudy. What do you think about Russell? Can you guys work together? How'd it go? I saw those numbers and those are legit. But if you just look at the 2022 season, Russell's first one in Denver, Jerry Jeudy had what was then a career high 972 yards, I want to say. So it's not like he didn't catch any passes from Wilson. It wasn't always smooth, and there were issues, and I think the issues got exacerbated when Sean Payton got there, and he and Russell didn't match well. And I don't know where Jerry Jeudy kind of fit in that, that relationship between the coach and the quarterback. But it's not like Russell and Jeudy didn't have any connections. That first year together, it was pretty good.
Fair enough. All right. So the other question becomes, if Cam Ward is gone at 2, do the Browns take Shedeur Sanders? So Todd McShay, he's now the draft analyst for The Ringer. Here's the talk that the Browns like what they've seen and heard from Shedeur Sanders. And McShay admits he's connecting the dots here. Shedeur's skill set strikingly similar to a handful of quarterbacks that Kevin Stefanski has won a lot of games with in the past. Case Keenum, won 11 games for the Vikings when Stefanski was the QB coach in 2017. Kirk Cousins, whose Vikings team won 10 games under Stefanski as the offensive coordinator in 2019. Most recently, Joe Flacco went 4-1 with the Browns starter as the Browns starter in 2023. So, again, you're hearing a lot that Shedeur Sanders is fading down. There is, I get where McShay is going with the skill set that Stefanski has worked with before relative to Sanders.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it is, I think, easy to connect those dots. I've been hearing it for a long time that just from a style standpoint, that Sanders fits what Stefanski has always done best. But I think you can make the same argument for Brian Callahan in the Titans, that he probably fits what they do best as well. What's a little concerning, though, and I like Shedeur Sanders. We've talked about it. I think he's worth taking at number 2. But when you look at those guys, Case Keenum, he might have been undrafted. Right? Kirk Cousins is a 4th rounder. Joe Flacco's a 1st rounder, but I'm not sure he fits with those 2 other guys. Joe Flacco's a big, tall, stand in the pocket, and throw the ball all over the place, right? So those 2 guys, they're kind of self-made quarterbacks, and that's not the kind of guy you're looking at for number 2. So I think the ceiling better be higher for Shedeur, but if it's just about a style standpoint, then yes, I certainly see how that makes sense.
Yeah, and we had heard earlier in the show, there's some talk that physical skill attributes, a lot of people have a 2nd-round grade on Shedeur Sanders, but it isn't as simple as, well, stamp it. You got to find the right fit.
Yeah, and that's not the only thing that matters, and I get it. I'm a huge big arm guy, and I love to watch it. And you think about all the possibilities, but that isn't all there is, right? If it was, then Jamarcus Russell would be a Hall of Famer. It's about accuracy in decision making and playing in the clutch, and those are the areas where Shedeur Sanders has been at his best. So I think there's some intangibleness to that, and that's hard when you're just basing it on film, right? And man, what are the RPMs and how quick does he move and those kinds of things? And those things matter. They really do. But I feel like he has enough. He has enough arm. He has enough athleticism that it allows the rest of his skill set, the best parts of his skill set, to come through.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key. That's, Andrew Berry has to identify that. If that's the case, man, you go get him, because those are some things that do translate in the NFL as well. Those are all things you can't watch film that you have to get a feel for. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, outside break. We'll talk a little bit more about the draft and the Browns' skill positions. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle-Telegram as well as BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Gene from North Carolina, lifelong Browns fan. Okay, show some class. Sign Chubb back, build some goodwill with the fan base again. I don't think he's washed. I don't care what they think. Just bring him back. I mean, the guy is class. Show some class yourselves. Grow up. Goodbye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, I think they want to bring Nick Chubb back, but it's got to be a deal both sides can live with.
Yeah, and I don't want this to sound harsh, but if he can't play, the fans aren't going to want him here. And I think there's a question about whether Nick Chubb can still play. Last year's 3.3 yards a carry, we didn't see the burst. I think we saw some signs that he might get somewhere close to what he used to be, and then he breaks his foot. And they have to address running back. And that's, we've talked about this, Dave. That's the tricky part, is if you know you're going to draft a running back that you expect to come and be your number one, and then you have Jerome Ford as your number 2/3 down back. Where does Nick Chubb fit? Is he going to accept being your quote-unquote third running back, or the guy that, only becomes the number one if the rookie is not good or the rookie gets hurt? I don't know if he's willing to take that role. Now, maybe he's left with no choice because there's no market anywhere else and he wants to stay here. But I think that's where it stands, and it's going to be tough, and it might not matter where Nick goes. That might be his role anywhere, and then it's going to be up to him to decide, am I going to take the veteran minimum somewhere else and try to prove myself, or in Cleveland and try to reprove myself? And that can be tricky sometimes, going back to a locker room where you used to be the guy, and now you're not the guy. And the depth chart's changed, and all of it, right? So I think both sides would have to, I think especially Nick, I think the Browns right now would sign him for the minimum and say you're number 3. I just don't know if Nick would come back and do that. And I don't think the Browns can promise him any more than that.
Right. And the reason they have let him go and try to explore other options is because they do respect what he's done and what he's meant for this franchise. If they didn't, they'd throw out the veteran minimum offer and, here, take it or leave it. So they're trying to figure out a way to make it work. PFF has worst-case draft scenarios for all 32 teams. For the Browns, they say the worst-case scenario is not drafting an offensive lineman. And they do new signee, Cornelius Lucas, potential starting left tackle, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, Ethan Posich, all free agents, none above a 63.9 PFF grade last season. I'm going to disagree with this as the worst-case scenario, and we'll see why in a minute. I get that they have to upgrade the offensive line. They have to get younger. I agree with all of that. We'll get to – you're smiling because you know where I'm going, but they do need to get younger on the offensive line.
Yeah, there's no argument there, and I expect them to. And, they took Zach Zinter in the 3rd round last year, so it's not like they don't understand that. It was Luke Whippler and DeJuan Jones the year before that, if I'm getting that right. I know what Jones was. I think that was Whippler's rookie class too. So they've drafted young guys, not in the first couple rounds in a long time on the offense, on the offensive line. But Andrew Berry appreciates that. He always talks about the importance of linemen. So I'm with you. They need to draft one, but I could probably think of some worse things too.
All right, here's why I'm saying this. Take a look at this and tell me how many of their first 5 or 6 picks they need to get the playmakers and skill position guys with. Yeah. This is the roster. It's Kenny Pickett. They don't have anybody else. You got Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong and nobody else. You got Jerry Jeudy and then Cedric Tillman and David Bell and David Njoku who hasn't been healthy. Man, with that skill position group, how many of your 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks do you have to go and get guys that are skill position guys and replenish the playmakers on this offense?
Yeah, that's a great question, David. I'm doing a little kind of free agency reset analysis, and as I play with the quarterback scenarios, whether you take one at number 2 or you don't, I think within those let's call them first 4 picks, right? The number 2, number 33, and then your 2 picks in the 3rd round. I think the Browns have to come away with quarterback, running back, tight end, and then that 4th spot is up for grabs. If you want it to be a left tackle, okay. If you want to address defensive tackle, you can make that argument. If you want to go receiver, I would listen to that too. I think receiver could be addressed in free agency still. I think there's still some guys out there that could make some sense with the Browns. But, yeah, I completely get your point. Where the offensive line, you can field the top 5, 6, 7 guys right now. It's not the same at quarterback, running back, tight end, and receiver. It's just not. So I do think there's probably a higher priority on those guys, assuming DeJuan Jones, you think DeJuan Jones can play left tackle. If you don't, then there's a pretty big hole at left tackle.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And I'm remember, Zach Zinter was coming off a broken fibula, and, interior offensive line, I think the guy can play. I liked the pick. I know he didn't play well when put on the field, but that's a matter of, all right, let's see what he does in his 2nd year. He was a 3rd round pick, and again, coming off a broken fibula.
Well, it better be. And, they need the third-down picks to hit, right? You need a guy to take a jump from year one. He just wasn't nearly good enough last year. And I know it was a really small sample size, so I'm not making any final determinations there. But if you told me, okay, he was going to start 16 games at one of the guard spots, that would be a concern. And I think you'd have to have a plan B.
Absolutely. That is absolutely fair. All right. This also from PFF, post-free agency power rankings. Ravens 1, Eagles 2, Lions 3. They have the Browns in the bottom 3. Those are the 3 teams picking 1, 2, and 3. With the Titans 1, the Browns 2, and the Giants 3. While there's serious questions on offense, Cleveland's defense remains a strength, led by Myles Garrett. Browns will once again rely on their defensive front to keep them competitive. I would argue they're probably not quite that low if you tell me that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is going to be back. If he's not, I get where you might have some questions in that back half of the defense. I guess you got Denzel Ward and you got Grant Delpit, but 30's awfully low. I think that's looking at the skill positions, and that's where you come up with that.
Yeah, I agree completely with you, David. That 30 feels way too low to me. And I get you don't know who's going to play quarterback, so that matters a ton. But a roster with Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Jerry Jeudy, and I think you can throw David Njoku in there. You could throw Wyatt Teller in there. I think you could throw Jack Conklin in there. Like, these are some proven Pro Bowl, All-Pro guys on this roster, starting with the best defensive player in the league, and then Denzel Ward's probably a top 10 defensive player in the league. I don't know who 29 and 28 and 27 are, but I doubt that they have that kind of top of the roster talent that I think the Browns do. Now, they need to make a bunch of moves on offense, and it starts at quarterback.
Yep, and again, because you don't have the quarterback, it's like, and the other thing is you have Jerry Jeudy and Njoku, and then there's very little wow factor offensively.
Yeah, but I think that change, right? The goal is for that to change between now and April 26th.
Yep, and there's a lot of running backs in this draft that could provide the wow factor that they need.
Yeah, and we going back to Myles real quick. When Andrew Berry lays out that game plan or that blueprint, I think it's, hey, we're going to get a big-time running back. We're going to get a big-time second tight end. We're going to add a receiver somewhere, and we're going to have a quarterback, whether it's Russell Wilson, Cam Ward, or Shedeur Sanders. And all of a sudden, that group looks a lot better, and then Myles knows that the defense can be really good. So I think there's a way to make it look like a team that can compete and contend for a playoff spot. I really do.
Scott Petrak, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Also, check him out, brownzone.com. We're a step aside. We continue talking Browns. Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and the Browns on SI. Straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you. And you, sir, what's your name? Where are you from?
Tom Burrell from Lexington, Ohio.
I'm playing Powerball. I use auto pick when I pick my numbers. Do I have better, worse, or the same odds?
Same odds.
I'd say better.
I still think worse.
Same odds.
He's got it. It's the same. Auto pick, numbers you pick, same odds, either way. He has it. He has it, folks. He already knows. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I don't know why our Browns news reporters are saying that we should get any other quarterback besides Shedeur Sanders because, quote unquote, he has a bad arm or his arm isn't the best, but he's the same guy who has the third most 20 yards or more completion in the NCAA. And you're saying that you don't feel like he's not a good deep ball thrower? And in my opinion, he's one of the best deep ball throwers in this draft, and we need to take him.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and the Browns on SI. Spencer, the arm strength relative to NFL throws isn't great. It's average-ish. It might be a little bit above average. Here's the thing. Shedeur Sanders excels in things you can't measure and can't see on tape. Guy's tough, played with a terrible offensive line, took a hit, processes pretty well, smart, is used to being the leader, the face. So, again, the average yards of completion, you can't look at stats like that because it doesn't translate. The defenses he was seeing in the Big 12, they're not like he's going to see in the NFL. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but that's why people are questioning it. What are your thoughts on Sanders?
Yeah, so I'll start with the fact that, I think there is evidence to the caller's point that he can make some of those throws. He might just not be able to do it as effectively as somebody like Cam Ward, who at this point is the consensus #1 quarterback in this draft class. And for obvious reasons, the arm strength is one of those things. And that's okay. I've kind of been saying, if Shedeur Sanders, I've heard kind of comped to in last year's class, Bo Nix. And if you're the Browns, we've spent a lot of time asking or wondering, can they find their Jaden Daniels in this class? And the answer has mostly been no. But if you get a Bo Nix in this class, that's okay too. Bo Nix took Denver to the playoffs this past year, and I think they feel pretty good about the fact that with Bo Nix, they have a pretty good future quarterback as long as Sean Payton's there sort of pulling the strings and he's the right fit for their offense. And I think Shedeur Sanders can be the same thing for Kevin Stefanski. I think he's a perfect fit. And I'll tell you, the more he talks, and I know people don't like when he talks sometimes because they think he comes off a certain type of way, but the more he talks and I hear him talk about just his confidence and why he's going to excel at the next level, I want him more for the Browns. And that doesn't mean I want him necessarily more than Cam. I think if the Browns are sitting there too and they have both on the table, I would take Cam Ward because I think he's the better prospect and the better talent. But if it comes to, okay, Cam's gone and you could take Shedeur Sanders, I think you pull the trigger because he continues to cite the fact that everywhere he's been, Jackson State, Colorado, he's turned those programs around and he's embraced this idea that, he's going to he knows he's going to go to a team in the NFL that wasn't very good last year. And he welcomes that. He wants that. And I do think there's a level of confidence and that sort of charisma and attitude that has to come with whatever quarterback the Browns draft because, there is pressure to be the first franchise quarterback for this team since Bernie Kosar. And I guess you could argue Baker was on that trajectory, but never quite got there because they moved on. So I think that lures me to him more. I've started to like the idea of him even more, so much so that if they end up taking one or the other, I can understand why, and I think I'd be okay with it. That can't be the only reason you draft somebody, obviously, but I think he can do it. The other things that you mentioned, well, that and he fits Kevin Stefanski's offense, that it would work with either quarterback, if they were to have the opportunity to draft either one. But I'm sold on Shedeur at this point. If he ends up being the pick, I think that could work for the Browns.
Yeah, they talk about him being brash and arrogant. I want that in my quarterback. As long as his teammates like him and he's coachable, give me the brash, arrogant guy 12 out of 12 times. To your point, if he's there and Cam's there, Cam has a higher ceiling just because of the physical skill set. So you go with the higher ceiling. But I'm with you. Brash and arrogant in a quarterback, I sign up for that. I like that.
Well, And I'll say real quick, Dave, we just spent the last week, I guess the last couple of days, Myles Garrett obviously spoke on Friday. And, we just spent the last couple of days sort of rehashing, asking the questions about if Myles is a leader on this team. And it kind of feels like the Browns need somebody like that, because Myles isn't that like outwardly, passionate guy who's like giving the speeches and necessarily in front of everybody. But I think Shedeur can be that. Like, I think he could really give this locker room and this team a sense of direction that they haven't really had from a player leadership standpoint. I think that's also very valuable.
Without question. All right, I'm going to put a couple of these together. One, do you think the Browns should trade for Kirk Cousins? He's still on the roster. They're paying him the $10 million bonus and all that. And then at this point in free agency, the guys that are out there, the veterans, it's the clearance rack. They all have some sort of defect, because if they didn't, teams would not have moved on from them this late in free agency. So there isn't the perfect quarterback prospect. It's, can you work and can they fit what you need them to do? And start with Cousins, and let's go to the veterans.
Yeah, so I've been somebody who's been high on Cousins this entire offseason, but the idea of Cousins for me was always baked in. Well, you're going to get him for the vet minimum. Like, he's going to be released, and you're going to have to pay him like $1.2 million, and for that price, why not? Why not see if there's something left? Why not see if he can sort of reclaim an older version of himself in Kevin Stefanski's offense? That's what lured me to Cousins. If it comes down to trading for him, I don't think you should do it if you're the Browns, because like, even Cousins, he comes with his own set of flaws. He's 36 years old. He's coming off an Achilles injury, 2 seasons ago. He fell off a cliff at the end of last year. He very well might be shot. And I get like signing him for $1.2 million and trying it, but if you have to trade like a fourth or third round pick for it, I just don't know that that's worth it for me. Especially knowing like, yeah, the Falcons are going to eat some of that salary, but they're not going to eat the Browns are still going to have to absorb some of his future money, and they just don't have the salary cap space to do that right now. So I'm kind of out on the idea of trading for him. Now, if maybe the Browns will get desperate and they'll pull the trigger, but I don't necessarily think they should do that right now. And in terms of the other guys that are left, it's starting to feel more and more like this is going to come down to the Browns just being sort of stuck with going back to Joe Flacco. Because right now I think everything's being held up by Aaron Rodgers, right? Wherever he goes is going to kind of dictate them. I think where Russell Wilson goes, and then wherever Russell Wilson goes, you're left with basically Carson Wentz, Joe Flacco, Desmond Ridder still out there. Like, there's the names get worse and worse from there. Trey Lance. And so, yeah, like if the Browns are going to want to sort of find some sort of bridge option, it might end up being Flacco that they sort of have to turn to. But yeah, there's no good options. And anybody who's like surprised by that, this is kind of what was par for the course for the Browns. They aren't in a very good situation from the quarterback standpoint. They needed to find obviously needed to piece this thing together somehow. They have to have somebody start games next year, especially if they're drafting a rookie and hoping to sort of wait to start him. So, like, they knew it was going to be slim pickings. You just got to kind of make the best of the situation and hope that your rookie that you draft is ready to start sooner rather than later.
Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, the Cleveland Browns on SI, and the Locked On Browns podcast. And I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll turn our attention to the draft. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
We're out here busting common lottery myths by talking to real players just like you and you. If an Ohio Lottery scratch-off game has 1 in 4 odds, that means if I were to buy 4 tickets in a row, I'm guaranteed to be a winner. True or false?
I'm going to say true.
Oh, that's false.
You're right, it's false. The jackpot for the Mega Millions is at its highest it's ever been before. I now have worse odds. True or false?
True. False.
False? That is exactly right. You can learn more by going to ohiolottery.com/knowtheodds.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan, as well as the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, how are you doing, man? Love the show. So I seen a mock draft or heard a mock draft over the last couple of days. They had the Browns trading out of 2 with the Giants, and the Giants going to 2 from 3 for Shedeur Sanders, and the Browns going from 2 to 3 for Jackson Dart. Now, in my opinion, if you like Jackson Dart enough to take him at 3, why not just take him at 2? Unless you're trying to squeeze a pick or 2, just take the kid at 2. Want to hear your thoughts. Go Browns. Woo-hoo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. And Spencer, my reaction, and I saw that, they're absolutely trying to get like a third-round pick. the thought would be they like Jackson Dart. They knew the Giants would go up to try to get Shedeur Sanders. So if you can get an extra third-round pick, we'll talk in a minute by why that's important. But it all comes down to how they evaluate those young guys and the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I've been saying for a while now, like if you aren't taking a quarterback, if you aren't taking one of the top 2 quarterbacks at 2, you should trade back. Like whether it's the Giants, whether it's a different team, I think as long as you stay in the top 10, you're still in pretty good shape to like get a player that you feel like can be an impact player. But if you evaluate these guys and you're like, yeah, we like Jackson Dart, you could probably get Jackson Dart late first round, with the 33rd pick. Just depending on how these things go, quarterbacks tend to get overdrafted anyway, so maybe you'd have to reach a little bit, but like you could get him with the 33rd pick potentially to start the second round. So I'm not worried. If the Browns were to trade back, it would be so that they can accumulate more picks, likely more, day 2 picks that allow them to, still add some talented players that can make an impact sooner rather than later. And so, yeah, like I have no problem with that because I've been saying all along, like if that's what this comes to and you like one of these other quarterbacks more than you like the top 2 quarterbacks, then yeah, you should trade back. And then maybe you still end up with Abdul Carter. Maybe you still end up with Travis Hunter, just as, depending on how the board falls or depending on if those top 2 teams both take quarterbacks. So yeah, I think that's probably a smart move. If they decide Jackson Dart's the guy, don't take him at 2 or 3. You wait and you take him, later first round if you need to, or that first pick of the second round.
So you did a mock draft, and I know you kind of said you got a little overboard with the offense. But here, take a look. We showed this earlier. This is why here's your mock draft. What I want to show, though, take a look at the Browns' skill positions. And this is screaming, boy, you better pick a lot of these guys in this draft because that group isn't going to win you many games. And I know, Pickett, you're going to add a quarterback. You need a running back. You probably need a stud running back. You probably need a wide receiver, and you definitely need a tight end if you're going to do Kevin Stefanski's offense. So having said that, we showed you a little bit of the mock draft. And if Cam Ward is there at 2, I think the Browns have to take him without question. It's a higher upside is why I think it's the distinguishing thing. And then you address running back and tight end. So you get some skilled position guys that can threaten a defense.
Yeah, and like obviously in this mock, I explained in the piece like the Titans stayed put at 1 and they took Travis Hunter, so that allowed Cam Ward to be there. I probably would have taken Shedeur Sanders if they took Cam Ward because I'm sort of convinced at this point they're taking one of them. But regardless, like you get the quarterback address there, and then the way the board sort of fell after that. And I'm gonna be honest, like I know I admitted in the piece that I got a little overzealous when it comes to just addressing the offensive needs. And I definitely think the Browns, like they still have some defensive needs to address. They still got to add to the defensive line, give some supporting cast to Myles Garrett in that way. That's probably the biggest thing they have on defense to address. Safety would be up there as well. But I could also see them just sort of addressing safety internally with guys they already have. So I don't know that one's as pressing that you would take a player on day 1 or 2. But I'm glad you sort of pulled up the comparison there in terms of like the skill position players, because I also sort of used Myles Garrett's comments last week as a guide when I did this, because he had those comments about, trusting Andrew Berry's plan to recreate the offense and that the defense was still going to be able to do their thing and how they're going to find a quarterback that they can trust and all those things. I'm paraphrasing, but that was generally what he said. And it just kind of feels like they've already sort of set the tone, whether it's with Myles or otherwise, around the idea that like, yeah, hey, we're going to really go heavy offense and try to fix some of these things. And look what they've done this offseason so far. Yeah, they added like a swing tackle, but a lot of their moves are on the defensive side of the ball. They haven't done a ton. But like, yeah, I know you get Kenny Pickett, but like they've added on the defensive side of the ball mostly. And so I do think like they're sort of already telling you, we plan on addressing some of these key needs on offense in the draft. Now, that doesn't mean they'll still use those first 4 picks or some iteration of their first 4 picks, because I did have them trade up a couple times on all offensive players. But in the end, I kind of liked how it felt because I was like, man, I just remade the Browns offense in one draft. But yeah, I'm sure they probably go defense somewhere in there. And, they got to prioritize a couple things on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I would say this, and I know it hasn't always worked out, but Andrew Berry's, the way he's addressed things has made sense. Now, he hasn't always hit on the picks, but
Yeah.
I think when you look at this, he's going offense and he's going skill position early and often.
Yeah, I think so too. You could throw offensive tackle in there. I obviously had the Browns trading back up to get one, and Josh Connerly in the first round to get that fifth-year option on his contract. But yeah, I think that's on both sides of the ball. The trenches are, I think, areas where the Browns have needs, but the skill positions, it's obvious. Jerry Jeudy proved, I think, last year he can be a number one wide receiver, but he still needs some help. Maybe there's a trade out there to be had. We know Andrew Bear likes to swing trades for wide receivers. And so maybe that allows him to address other skill positions like running back, like tight end, because you got to think about it, like David Njoku, who took a little bit of a step back last year, also in the last year of his deal. So, they got to sort of think about the future at that position. So I think everything I did made sense. It just would be it would be far-fetched, I think, to think that they only address offense, through those first 4 picks. But maybe, crazier things have happened.
Yeah, I'm with you. I want offense. Give me offense. We need points. Spencer German, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Take care.
Spencer German, make sure you check him out. 92.3 The Fan, also Browns on SI and the Locked On Browns podcast. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.